This is Out Loud and Laughing. Hey, John.
Hey, Brian.
How's it going?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so excited for today. I bet you are too.
Yes, very. We are welcoming Jim Ferraros to the chat, Out Loud and Laughing. Quick blur before Jim kind of hops in. We're super excited. He first gained fame as a contestant on the first season of American Idol, went on to release several albums. He also appeared in independent film series Eating Out, which actually I was a huge fan of. He is now releasing a 6-track he titled Explicit, which includes his hit dance songs Take My Bow and Pyramid. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you both so much for having me. First off, when you said he gained, I was like, he gained weight. I thought was where you were going to go with that. Thank God it turned to a different direction, so I appreciate it.
Jim, we have been on your Instagram. You have not gained weight. You look fabulous.
Yes.
Thank you. So what do you think about Explicit? I hear that we've been jamming out to it. So
so super excited to have you on the pod for so many reasons. But for the music alone, I have been listening to this album now that it's out, and on nonstop. It helped me get through my shower this morning. It was great. I was like dancing in the shower, and so much fun.
Love it.
I was actually like thinking about it in the shower. I'm like, what is this giving me? And I was like, it's giving me familiar, but also new.
Love that. That was kind of the vibe, just to kind of honor and pay homage to what I've done in the past, because I think there's still elements that can still be recycled. I mean, music is very cyclical. It kind of comes and goes. And, I think like Timbaland was like a big influence when I was putting out my record in like 2005. So there's a lot of that heavy bass elements throughout, and dance, pop. I mean, Britney was at the core for me growing up. And like I said, I think like if it's George Michael and Justin Timberlake and Britney and they had like a musical throuple, that would kind of be like the birth of like Explicit. So
we love a throuple on this podcast, so that's great.
Yeah, all day. We're cousins, not brothers, so it's not weird. Yeah, same. I was listening to it, not in the shower because I'm afraid if I would have danced and slipped. But during my workout this morning, I was definitely taking my bow.
Awesome.
Take My Bow is one of the singles on your album.
Yeah.
Just fabulous, and I truly enjoyed it. I was just excited generally to celebrate you on this platform.
Thank you so much, and thank you both for having me. It means a lot.
Yeah, definitely. We would love to, we want to talk more about your album, but I wanted to give our listeners just kind of like insight into who Jim is and how you kind of started. And, we know that you kind of kickstarted your career as like a 19-year-old from Chicago, seemingly joining which would have become the biggest show in the country. But at the time, you probably had no idea. So, would love to just deep dive a little bit into how you kind of started, how you were feeling. Also, you were one of the first openly gay people kind of in that space. So like just looking back, like do you remember the excitement, the fear of like being your authentic self on this platform that just became so massive?
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, first off, nobody knew what it was in the US, right? I had heard about the show from a friend who had heard a commercial on Kiss FM on the radio. And, I growing up in junior high and high school, I was very, very musical theater, been in every production, sang national anthems, right, same. So I wasn't thinking pop star. I wasn't thinking I wanted to be like, the next, pop singer. I just wanted to go because Paula Abdul was going to be a judge. And I was like, I'm obsessed with you. I want to like sing for you. But I remember very, very vividly going to this hotel in Chicago. It was, again, first season. Nobody knew what it was. And I walked in and I'm like looking around for people. And there was a woman like walking around with like a headset and a mic. And she's like, oh, just take a seat. We're just waiting for more people to show up. There wasn't anybody there. So I was like, okay. Then they waited for 4 more people. They put us in a room, like a line of duct tape on the floor, and like a porn old school camcorder. I'm like, oh, okay. This could be interesting. And we're supposed to say our name, sing something, step back. Right? There were 5 of us in this room, and then they took us out and sat us down, and said, "Tell us something about you that no one would know." And I said, "Well, my parents are both deaf." Not thinking it was going to do anything. Like, that's just my life. I'm a coda, a child of deaf adult. Like, if you haven't seen the movie, you should. It's amazing. But that was just all I knew. So I just thought it was interesting. I didn't think it was going to be groundbreaking. But to them, I could just see this woman's eyes get really, really big. And she was just like, are you kidding? And I'm like, no. So it kind of took its own life form with that. And it's, Paula had asked me to sign my song and sing it at the same time. I'm like, oh, America's Next Top Interpreter, apparently, and not vocalist. So I was like, shit, I didn't even rehearse this. It was on the fly. So I was very sloppy with my sign. But it tugged on people's heartstrings, and I just wanted it to be more about my voice. But anyway, they were very complimentary. Things went south after that, and I think people need to realize that on Idol, it costs money to clear on national television songs that are more current. So I couldn't
Yeah.
sing, the top 10 Billboard, songs of that moment because they couldn't afford to clear them. It was a show that nobody had known about. They didn't have the budget to do that. So it was like, here's 8 songs, take one and memorize it in 24 hours, and then perform it in front of millions of people. Go. And so I was like, oh, it's Motown week. What do I know? None of these songs. And so I was like, great, easy like Sunday morning, by the Commodore. Like I probably heard that song once in my life. So moral to the story is that like just because like you have a bad night doesn't make you a bad singer, I mean, and I just felt like I didn't get a chance to really show things. And anyway, so we were really lucky because we went on to go tour. We did a 30 city tour in 40 days. It was crazy, living out of a bus and, out of hotel rooms. And it was just the best, and then I moved to LA and I was outed by the Globe. It was like this, it's kind of like the National Enquirer, right? I mean, hardly relevant now,
Hmm.
but it was this huge 2-page spread that said American Idol star gay. Like, who's going to be next? Like, if it was like influenza or something, so I was like, okay, well, I didn't tell my dad yet. This is going to be interesting. And then I sort of made the decision to come out publicly at 19. Out and The Advocate back then were sort of, wanting the exclusive. And I told my father first, that this was going to happen, and then I decided to come out. So it was really interesting. You don't think in that moment the gravity of what's happening at that age. I'm just trying to make a career. I You have
Yeah.
this limited amount of time because they're churning out these seasons, right? And I was number 9, so I didn't have the exposure that Kelly or Justin or Nikki or Tamira did. So I was hustling and openly gay on top of that, and so I knew that I was just on autopilot, and any opportunity that came my way, I was so grateful for. So thank God, for Gabe Lopez, who produced my first record, Roller Coaster, Alan Broca, who wrote and directed Eating Out. And so thank God those two opportunities came to me, and those two things kind of happened simultaneously. So I was able to get songs on the soundtrack. I was able to support the record and do, the film festival circuit. So, you just kind of go, you just run because you don't know what else to do. That was very long-winded. I'm so sorry about that.
No, it was all encompassing. Brian and I recently talked about our coming out, and the upstream that we had from that was not a platform that included millions of people. I
Yeah.
could only I could only imagine the added stress, especially having not told your parents, and then this considerably being sort of the way that they'd find out. With that comes sort of the natural part, being known,
Yeah.
fame, right? So while you were experiencing that, it sounds like there was a moment where there was a time that you needed to sort of, or that you did step back from the spotlight. And I'm just curious, after sort of that whirlwind, after that momentum, what did it feel like taking a little bit of a step back? And in that, who did you find Jim to be? Did you become somebody else? Were there new things that you had learned about yourself? Can you tell us a little bit about that time?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, just because I feel like I sort of reinvented myself in a way. I had spent so much time taking in this advice from people unsolicited that were like, you should never have come out.
Yeah.
You will have an uphill battle. You will never get the opportunities that other people will. And again, this was 2000. So my album and Eating Out came out in 2005. This is a very different climate. Um, and so I was just tired because I felt like from even from childhood and being, bashed and gay bashed for years, I think sometimes we as queer people, if people don't like certain parts of who we are, we start taking them out and putting them in a drawer and kind of closing that drawer and then just kind of evolving. But then you end up like, I've said this to my therapist like a million times. You feel like a slice of Swiss cheese because there's so many holes in you, and you kind of spend your later years kind of going back in that drawer and kind of refilling them, right? Um, I met my ex-husband who was 17 years older than me, and he seemed stable. He seemed just like he had his own business and house in the suburbs and dogs, and it just felt very nice to just sort of sit still for a minute. I fell in love with him. We were together for 11 years. Um, I started working for him and I started sort of making a name for myself in the bridal industry. I would go to New York Bridal Fashion Week. I would utilize social media and, you know, talk to designers and they were like, who is this weird man talking about bridal? Like, what is your obsession? And I was just playing with it. I was just like, oh my God, I want to be buried in this fabric of your dress. And I was just trying to get them to notice me and it worked. Like I was invited to every show front row. Like I would go to New York and designers would like message me to be like, Jim, can you please come to the showroom? We want you to see the new collection. And I was just someone that was just kind of like a broker, or I would take like a store, like a retailer, and I would be like, oh, you have to see this collection. I would bring them together. And so I sort of reinvented myself, and music and acting was like not even a thing. Um, but it's very hard to work for someone you're married to. And I would suggest that you do not do that. Um, but I learned a lot. And, we separated in 2017. Nobody plans to divorce when you get married, but I don't think we really talk about that in our community,
Mm.
but it happens. And then fucking Tinder, when you go on and you're like, oh, I need attention because I'm single now, and it's like, am I old? And I was like 34. Um,
In the gay world.
right, which
Yeah.
is, you know, I mean, I should be eating like oatmeal and in a wheelchair. And so I saw my future husband, my current husband, and I was just like, oh, one time thing. Like I'm just, kind of fucking around. And then I met him and I was just like, damn it, this is not a one time thing.
Yeah.
And we've been together 8 years since it'll be 8 years in October, married for four in November. So,
Congrats.
and then it's like, I thank you. And then it's like music. And I compare this to like a sport, if you're in the arts, if there's just some kind of creativity in you, it's sort of like a pilot light, right? And it sort of always burns. And it's like, do you want to touch it or not? And I think in
Mm.
2023, it got to the point where I was really just curious about what Jim would sound like now. And also, like all these queer artists, like when I was coming up, there was nobody. There was Katie Lang and Rufus Wainwright when I was out. And so now it's like Sam Smith, like Chapel Roan and Renee Rapp, and even like stars out of Idol that have gone on to do huge things. Like Adam Lambert is like fucking incredible. Like David
Yeah.
Archuleta, David Hernandez, Michaela Gordon. Like there is a life for us now, right? And so I feel like now the door is so much more open that I was like, well, maybe I'm not done. Maybe there's still people that grew up with me over the last 2 decades might be interested in hearing what I would do now. And so that was really sort of the catalyst of getting back into music.
I love that. Thank you. I especially love when you like talk about how it's just kind of on the burner and
Yeah,
it's just kind of, it's always
always
there.
there.
It's interesting when we were chatting, setting up this whole podcast with you, John and I were like, let's just learn more about Jim before he comes on the pod. And a couple of fun facts, like I remember I moved to LA after I graduated college, right? And so I lived by myself in a studio in like 2006. So we might have overlapped in some
Soon,
ways.
yeah.
But I remember getting your films eating out in Netflix in the mail. Because like
Yeah.
that was my one outlet to get gay movies, right?
Hmm.
So I feel like just so I probably had a crush on you in 2006. Just gonna say that. Great films too, absolutely love them. But like even like learning more about you was just like you talked a little bit about like growing up with deaf parents and being fluent
Yeah.
in sign language, and so being a performer, especially with music, like that's an interesting combination, right? Because this music that's so audio and your parents who are
Yeah.
deaf, like what did that teach you about communication, especially in the music industry? Like how, because I think that's a huge differentiator for you and I love it and I think it's so beautiful, but what does that mean to
That's a
you?
great question. I tell people that if you're a coda, you're sort of torn between the hearing world and the deaf world, right? And so to try and
Mm.
fuse those worlds together, for many of us, can be really traumatic. And I think, and I've met a lot of codas who just have a lot of deep-seated issues with being relied upon at a very young age. So, for me, I have a younger sister, she's 2 years younger, but my parents almost sort of pre-planned to kind of have me as their interpreter, right? And so when you're 4 and 5, you are dealing with very adult issues, things that most children wouldn't be able to grasp or kind of wrap their brains around. So I was interpreting, like my mother would take me to her gynecologist, and I would, be interpreting, but not just interpreting. You have to take the information from a doctor who is using terms that my mother would never know and kind of like rework it so that she knew what the doctor was saying. So I was doing double duty there, and I started reading very, very early, but then I grew up with closed captioning, right, on my television. So I read a lot. I just read the words a lot, and then I competed in spelling bees. So that was how I really excelled at English and spelling. But I think the communication aspect of it is when you are sort of like thrust into an environment where everyone is much older than you, it sort of creates a disconnect between kids who are the same age as you. And so I always felt like I would go visit a friend, but I would find myself just talking to their parents, like in the kitchen, because I never had that pick up the phone and just talk to your mom or talk to your dad. Like I couldn't do that. So I was so engaged with hearing parents, and I just wanted to talk to them and just sort of understand like how they parented. And so then it would like confuse my friends who were like, why are you talking to my parents? Like we should go be playing video games, right? But I was just so enamored by adults. And so I grew up really fast. But there's a lot of great things about being that way too. I think it prepares you, particularly with media training. I never really had formal training, but I think when you're expressive and you deal with adult issues very, very young, you can sort of get there faster. So I think that really prepared me for Idol and beyond.
Thank you for shining a light on that. I feel like there's an entire community out there, and maybe this isn't even spoken enough about.
Yeah.
And the pun doesn't mean to be insensitive, but to be heard in a
Yeah.
world that feels soundless is really, really impactful. As we have a couple minutes here left with you, and I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, you've stepped back into the music world.
Yeah.
Congratulations with this EP that's launched.
Thank you.
Yeah, big round of applause. That's for you, Jim. That one's for you. What part of this journey made you realize that your voice and your message? I mean, you did mention having an audience that was waiting for your return.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about a little bit of that. And then also, we want to make sure we know where to find you. So make sure you let us know where we can follow you, where we can get this music, and how we can continue following your journey.
No, for sure. Well, let me get that first out of the way. But I'm on Instagram. I'm very active there. So at Jim Ferraros is my handle. But my music's everywhere. So it's iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to music. It is all out today. So please, give it a shot and hear it. I hope you will love it. I celebrated, it was the 20th anniversary of my first album this year. And I remember doing a post about it on my Instagram, and people, the amount of people that connected with it, the amount of people that say, I still have it, or the amount of people that say, I had to replace this 5 times and it was so hard to find. I remember, being 22 years old and walking into a Best Buy and just wanting to see it in person, right? These were the days, kids, if you're Gen Z right now, like you went into a store and you bought a CD.
Completely.
Yeah, it was just such an incredible moment that in the moment when I was doing it, you don't think about everyone else, right? You don't think about how they're perceiving it or what it does for them until many years later, where you can actually step back and reflect. And the things that people have said, not just roller coaster, but eating out. And those have been so important to self-discovery for a lot of queer people. It's, I never really realized that until people actually say, Jim, you don't understand, like there was nothing out there. And I had to hide renting this movie at Blockbuster or at Netflix or whatever, and find ways to like connect. And because there was no representation. And so queer cinema at the time, it was just so lacking. And, we know that there are a lot of downsides to the way that we live our life, right? We know the trauma, we know the sadness, we get all of that. But eating out was supposed to be light and enjoyable and unapologetically sexy and sexual. And it can be fun to be gay too, and that was the counterpart to everything else that was out there at the time. So I loved being a part of it. It was just fun and silly and very American Pie. And I just had a blast doing, those 2 films, and even another gay sequel I did with Willem and RuPaul. And it was just so much fun to just show people that, living your life and living in your truth can be so much fun,
Yes. That Love that. Thank you. We would love to have you back on soon.
Please.
It was such a great conversation. I feel like there's so much more we can talk about. So thanks for joining us today, Jim, and really appreciate the conversation.
No, thank you both so much. Let's do this again. You two were great. And thanks for the thoughtful questions and the time. It means a lot. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
This was Out Loud and Laughing. We're available everywhere you get your podcast. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, iHeart, or wherever.